Mr. President.
Senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday marked 10 years since the horrendous attack of Americans on American soil. But it led to a lot of patriotism and a lot of flags being displayed all over the country. And over the weekend, I noticed that my 3-year-old granddaughter and my 4-year-old granddaughter, when they saw a flag hanging anywhere, said, "God bless America." Throughout the history of the United States, each generation has had at least one iconic moment in time that served to galvanize the nation and call each and every American to take on a cause much greater than themselves. Ultimately, the results they were able to achieve served to define who they were as a generation and what they were capable of, both as individuals and as a nation. For my father, that moment was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. As we watched with growing concern, a terrible evil had taken the whole world to the brink of war. Now we found we no longer had a choice as to whether or not we would get involved. We were forced to take action and bring our military might to bear against an enemy that had set its sights on world domination. As soon as the call went out, brave men and women from all across the country volunteered to serve in our military and to take up arms to defend the rights and liberties we cherish as Americans. They soon proved to be worthy of the task, as we once again showed that ours was the greatest fighting force the world has ever known. Thanks to them, the tyranny and oppression that threatened to overwhelm Europe was halted, and peace and freedom was once again restored to a war-weary world. Returning home from the battlefields on which they had served with distinction, our servicemen and women took up another great challenge, and that was to rebuild our nation and to restore its greatness. Their commitment and dedication to that great mission helped to make the United States what it is today. Thanks to them, their sons and daughters received the greatest gift they could possibly receive, our American way of life. Their actions made it clear that the American dream belongs to everyone, and it really can come true if we're willing to do whatever is necessary to make it happen. For me and my generation, our iconic moment came with the news that the Soviet Union had launched Sputnik into space. In that brief moment in time, we were once again filled with that same determination as we realized that we were in second place in the race for space and in other things. That would never be acceptable or accepted. In the days after that startling announcement, people of all ages found themselves looking to the skies, wondering if we could answer this daunting challenge. Our curiosity and our ingenuity would again be put to the test as we all tried to help in the effort to bring about that one giant step for mankind that wasn't to come for several more years. My friends and I, junior high, banded together. Although we were all very young to help, we wanted to learn all we could about rockets so we could become rocketeers, or at least we tried our best to be worthy of the title. Once again, we had a difficult goal to reach for, and we were proud to think of ourselves as part of that call to action. Of course, President John F. Kennedy then issued the challenge to the nation that we would send a man to the moon and return him safely to Earth. It sounded impossible. But with American know-how, we were able to develop and put into action a plan that made it happen. When the time came, the world watched with wonder and amazement as Neil Armstrong took those first steps on the moon and proved once again that whatever goals we set, we always seem to find the tools and talents we need to get the job done. For my children, their generation's iconic moment came on September 11th. When we were once again cruelly attacked by terrorists who had hijacked several planes and used them to destroy the World Trade Center and part of the Pentagon. It was a moment in time that everyone will long remember for the impact that day and the events surrounding it had on our world and our lives, an impact that continues to be felt. Even though it was 10 years ago, for almost all of us, the images of September 11th are still fresh in our minds. We can remember where we were when we first heard the news that our nation was under attack. We can remember how we felt as we watched the Twin Towers fall, and the sense of loss as harsh reality of all the lives that were lost that day became all too real. There were many lessons learned as we watched the rescue crews, along with our police and firemen, attempt to save as many as they could from the building and then from the wreckage. It was a harsh reminder of how delicate and precious our lives are and how the gift can be taken from us at a moment's notice. Yet out of all that was lost, there was the birth of something even greater, something more powerful and enduring. It was the sense of community, this sense of country that bound us together as one nation, as one America. We stood side by side with our neighbors, our families, and even complete strangers, looking out for one another and helping those in need. Terrorists thought we were a weak nation and would crumble in the face of violence. Those who wanted to hurt us sent a clear message, yet we sent another. American flags sprung up in every yard, flew from every building, and hung from our overpasses. The powerfully simple message of the Stars and Stripes was our message. We are America, and we stand together. Like those moments before us, the morning's light the next day brought with it a firm resolve that we would, once again, come together as one to address that attack. Political differences would no longer separate us. Concern for our shared future was so strong, it would unite us to face this threat to our well-being. Together, we resolved that we would do everything we could to ensure that terrorism would never again take such a terrible toll from our nation or any other nation. I remember during that time being at an event where ambassadors from around the world offered an outpouring of sympathy and comfort for our grieving nation. I was touched by their sympathy and care for America. I was also pleased so many countries helped us to follow the money trails, which led to the arrest and prosecution of countless terrorists. In the years since that terrible day, justice has also been delivered by our brave servicemen and women who have once again answered the call to duty and taken up arms to rid the world of the network of terror wherever it's found. Thanks to their efforts, nations that had never known freedom before now dare to dream of a better tomorrow for themselves and for their children. People who had lived in fear under the tyranny of oppression will now have a say in their shared future as citizens of the world. Those who had known nothing but anguish and despair now have a reason to hope for a better life. The Middle East is still in turmoil as the people reach for freedom and individual prosperity. C.S. Lewis once said that God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. It's his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. I think it's clear that the pain we felt at that day was sufficient to rouse us to all the action as it opened our hearts and our minds to God and to each other. In the days to come, the memories of all that we witnessed on September 11th will stay with us and serve as a constant reminder that freedom isn't free. It often comes to us at all too great a cost. In that spirit, we will never forget those who lost their lives that day, their loved ones, or all who knew them and called them their friends. For this generation and those to follow, their memory will continue to inspire us to be ever vigilant and constantly on guard at the gates of freedom and to ensure that this, one nation under God, indivisible, will continue to be the home of liberty and justice for all, for ourselves, for our children, and for many generations to come. Let's remember September 11th and the feelings we had for our country and each other. May we rekindle the sense of community, country, and world that we felt then. May lasting good come out of chaos. I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
terminated.
Without objection.
I have a unanimous consent request for a committee to meet during today's session. It has been approved by Senator McConnell and by me. So I ask consent that this request be agreed to and printed in the record.
Without objection.
Mr. President, if we would pause just a few minutes, think about what's gone on in America this year. We've had flooding on the Mississippi and Missouri rivers and other rivers in the Midwest. To show the power of this flood, on the Mississippi River alone, there's 3 million acres underwater, farmland. We've had devastating tornadoes in the south. These tornadoes don't have names, but they have a viciousness that's hard to comprehend. Joplin, Missouri, about 200 people killed. Devastation. Those winds, they believe, reached nearly 300 miles an hour. Some say they're the highest recorded winds ever. And they just eliminated everything in their path. Wildfires in the south and the west have been extremely harsh. Take Texas alone. Fires have been burning in Texas for the last month. 2,000 homes have been destroyed, burned to the ground. The fires are still burning. I heard today that they're about 50% controlled. We now have had Hurricane Irene. The wake of damage to Hurricane Irene hit numerous states. States that usually have no damage, all up the coast. Vermont has no coastline, but they were devastated. Hundreds of bridges washed out in Vermont. Vermont is a sparsely populated state, about 600,000 people, I understand, in the whole state. But it has been really hurt. The largest office complex in the state with some 1,700 employees out of operation, underwater. Tropical Storm Lee followed that quickly. That has followed Irene. And Tropical Storm Lee has left damage in lots of places. We haven't been hit real hard here in the metropolitan area of the District of Columbia. But I've been back here quite a while. I can never, ever remember raining for a week at a time. That's what we just had. Rain basically all last week. Potomac River is very high, but other states have been hurt worse by Tropical Storm Lee. I don't remember the exact number of deaths because of Lee, but it's approximately 20. Here in Virginia, a 12-year-old boy in his backyard was washed away. Since the first of this year, President Obama has issued disaster declarations for 48 states. And the hurricane season isn't over yet. Commerce Department said this year we've had 10 disasters, each with more than $1 billion in damage. And $1 billion is an understatement when you talk about what happened with Irene. They believe that will reach $25 billion, that one storm. That's the most we've had in decades, probably the most ever. So no one should be surprised that the Federal Emergency Management Disaster Relief Fund is about broke. As of today, they have a few $100 million left, probably in the $300 million range. In just the last 2 weeks, FEMA spent almost $400 million out of the fund for Hurricane Irene and other disasters. That shouldn't be out of that fund. It should be forward funded. So FEMA is dangerously close to running out of money. To make sure that FEMA will have enough money to meet immediate needs for food, water, and emergency housing for victims of new disasters, on August 28th, FEMA stopped approving funding for disaster recovery projects from past disasters. This means funding is on hold to rebuild schools, hospitals, roads, public utilities from past disasters, like Katrina, Rita, Gustav, Ike, the Mississippi River flood of 2008. They're still doing work there to renovate that area. The Tennessee flood of 2010 and tornadoes in Missouri and Alabama of days past. So we have hundreds of millions of dollars that need to be spent in places like Joplin, Missouri. Joplin, Missouri, they're not spending money there, Mr. President. After all they've been through, no money. The need is urgent. And that's why we're seeking to move this House-passed revenue measure to serve as a vehicle for disaster relief. The House insists, as they should, that because of our Constitution's origination clause, all appropriation measures have to originate in the House. So we had to take a bill, it was a House bill that we have here on the calendar. And that's why we have to move to the Burma revenue measure tonight as a vehicle to allow the Senate to address this disaster assistance. Now, the Burma sanctions bill is a bill that my friend, the Republican leader, he's been out front on this issue for ages. He's been the watchdog of this terrible work and an adverse nature that's taking place in Burma. And he has been out front on this issue, and I appreciate that very much. Every year we pass these Burma sanctions unanimously. No one opposes them. The only reason that anyone might be holding up this bill today, this Burma sanctions bill, is because my friends on the other side of the aisle, the Republicans, don't want to allow the Senate to vote on disaster assistance. Why do we need to do that? How much more specific do I need to be? We need to help communities hit hard by flooding, tornadoes, hurricanes, and other acts of God. I would think twice if I were one of my Republican friends. I've gone over some of the areas where these tornadoes and these fires and other natural disasters have occurred. And this is our only hope of getting help to these states. The House is indicating they're going to send us a bill, but they're playing around the edges of what is really needed to be done. We have a bill, Mr. President, that was reported basically out of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Democrats and Republicans supporting it. What is needed is about $9 billion. We, because we want to be in keeping with the Budget Deficit Reduction Act, because in there we're allowed $7 billion. That's the number we are going to put forward tomorrow on this bill. So it would be a real shame if we're not allowed to move to this Burma sanctions bill, because everyone voting no on a motion to proceed to this is voting no on giving assistance to these states. There's no other way we can do it. And we're not going to accept some small number that the House sends us. We can't do that. The House is planning on doing some of its usual stuff, I don't say that in a positive sense, and sending us the continuing resolution that we must enact prior to the end of this month, and they're going to stick in that funding for FEMA, which is very, very low. We can't allow that to happen. So I hope everyone tonight at 5:30 will vote to allow us to go forward on this most important piece of legislation. Mr. President, I would ask that there be a quorum call to begin.
Without objection. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
The Majority Leader.
I ask unanimous consent to call the quorum be initiated.
Without objection. The morning business is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration of the motion to proceed to HJ Resolution 66, which the clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to consideration of H.R. H.J. Res. 66, approving the renewal of important restrictions contained in the Burmese Freedom and Democracy Act of 2003.
Pass. Call the quorum be terminated and the time be divided equally between the majority and minority.
Without objection. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Alabama.
I would ask that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, our country is in a very, very serious economic crisis. We're told by Mr. Erskine Bowles and Senator Alan Simpson. Erskine Bowles was chosen by President Obama to head his debt commission, and they gave a statement to the Budget Committee, on which I'm ranking member, that this nation has never faced a more predictable economic crisis based on the size of our debt. All of us know that. The American people are angry with us. They cannot believe it's possible that we are borrowing 40 cents of every dollar that we spend. We're spending $3.7 trillion this fiscal year ending September 30th. We'll take in $2.2 trillion, give or take a few hundred billion. And this is not acceptable. We cannot continue. How did it happen? How is it possible that we are borrowing 40 cents of every dollar that goes out of the door, increasing the permanent debt of the United States? Well, one way it's happening is what's happening now before us on the bill that's being moved today by Majority Leader Reid. He would add $6.9 billion to the FEMA account for emergencies. We just saw the legislation about less than an hour ago, maybe 30 minutes ago. Has anybody given any serious thought to that? $7 billion. The state of Alabama's general fund budget is $2 billion. $7 billion is a lot of money. And we've not looked at it. We've not thought about it. It's above the budget, I guess above our budget numbers. We don't have a budget. Senator Reid said earlier this year it would be foolish to have a budget. Foolish to have a budget. We're now well over 860 days in this Senate without having passed a budget. Is that another reason we're spinning the country into bankruptcy? Well, I just don't think this is an appropriate thing. I strongly oppose adding another emergency debt spending bill that we haven't carefully examined every penny of it to make sure it's all necessary and appropriate. No one has seen those numbers and the analysis that would justify it. I come from a state that was hammered with the worst series of tornadoes we've ever suffered in Alabama. I've been to those communities and towns and seen those families that have lost all they have, lost lives of loved ones and injured people. I know that we are going to need to have an emergency spending for those programs. You've got fires in Texas and we've got flooding. We know that. We have certain money set aside for emergencies already. How much more do we need to spend? I don't know yet. I'd like to have some very carefully done expert analysis before we announce another $7 billion. And just forgive me if I'm frustrated. I think the American people are frustrated. We went through a continual battle for weeks, months really, over the debt ceiling. And I know I didn't like the way this bill was written. I know we had to face up to it, though, and do some things. And so we finally reached an agreement. I didn't vote for it in the end. But it was supposed to save $2.1 to $2.5 trillion, $2,500 billion, $2,000 billion over 10 years. Next year, fiscal year, beginning October 1st, it would reduce the spending for next year by $7 billion. The very same amount now the majority leader wants us to throw in on top of that as an emergency spending, not within our spending limits, not controlled by our spending limits, wipe him out, that entire saving for next year. And on top of that, the President has now announced he wants to spend $450 billion more. And don't worry, it'll be paid for, he told us in the speech Thursday night. How would it be paid for? Well, we'll just have this debt committee. I'll just send them a note and say, you cut another $450 billion. Over 10 years, just promise that you'll cut another $450 billion over 10 years, and I'll spend $450 billion now. That's the way we're heading down the road to uncontrollable debt. So, now I understand the President has announced that he just wanted to raise taxes on businesses and all by $450 billion. And we may get a proposal on how to do that today. I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. I expect to read it. I would expect that the President, if he's serious, would tell us precisely what taxes he intends to increase and how much they'll bring in. Got to pass it now, we're told, but we haven't seen the legislation, to my knowledge, yet. They promised it today. So this is not, in my humble opinion, sound management. The President of the United States has an Office of Management and Budget, 400, 500 people work there. He is the superintendent of every cabinet department in our country. They all work at his pleasure. The sub-cabinet people work for him. He's got the entire agencies that he can call on to help produce proposals, Commerce Department, the Treasury Department, on what taxes to raise and what taxes not to, how much it should be brought in. We have opportunities, we have the staff, he does, to send us a detailed proposal about what kind of emergency spending we ought to be undertaking. I don't know if Senator Reid just conjured this up among his staff or whether he's gotten a detailed proposal from the House, from the President. Just to suffice it to say, I hope my colleagues will not move forward to a bill that contains $7 billion in new spending above our limits, statutory limits that were passed in this debt ceiling. Why? Basically to obviate the need of having a budget. So, we need not to be moving to legislation and rushing through that kind of new spending program, because that is precisely how it is. That day after day, week after week, we have increased spending in this country to the point that it cannot be sustained. Every witness before the Budget Committee has told us we are on an unsustainable path. I just had occasion to go over the food stamp numbers. I'd been hearing, I knew these food stamp numbers had gone up. When President Bush left office, we were spending $31 billion, I believe it was, on food stamps. This year we'll spend 79. President Obama will have doubled spending on food stamps, doubled it, in 3 years, not 4. His first year in office, food stamp spending increased 46%. We need to look under the hood of the engine of this program. We want to be sure that poor people have food. We're willing to do that. Everybody is. But at a time of fiscal challenge for our nation, time of the largest debt we've ever seen, we have to examine all of our programs. Can we justify those kind of increases? Can we justify emergency spending that's unthought out and not carefully accounted for? I don't think so. I think we should not go to legislation that seeks to do that. and I would oppose cloture on this bill if that's what's happening, as I believe it is. I thank the Chair and would yield the floor. And note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka?
And the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.